best practices session. I'm Wendy, I'm from the UK, I'll be chairing. So I'll introduce our first speaker, Tracey, talking about the assessing species substitution potential to support sand flathead stock recovery in Tasmania. Sorry.
All right, good morning everyone. Hope everyone's head is feeling reasonably clear after last night. So this is a follow-up to the talk I gave the other day. So there are a couple of replicate slides in here, so I apologise to anyone that was in the other talk. I'd also like to acknowledge my long list of co-authors here. This has been a collaboration between research and government. So in Tasmania, we've got about 130,000 recreational fishers, about 27% of the population. So it's a very popular activity. And we have one species that has been sort of the bread and butter fishery for generations, and that's the sand flathead. If you look here up the top, we have all our catches. Sand flathead is almost an order of magnitude greater than all the other species, but you can also see that we've got a really good diversity of species, both benthic species and pelagics that are enjoyed by the recreational fishery. We've also got a very diverse coast in Tasmania. So Tasmania is the island off the bottom of Australia. It's a little triangle, so we have three very distinct coasts with very distinct habitats, all within maybe a 5 or 6 hour drive of each other. Our population centres, our main population centres is Hobart, our capital, down here, and then Launceston up the top, and then along the north coast there's a number of bigger towns as well. But what we see is that most of the fishing activity is happening in the southeast, and that makes sense. It's where the larger population of people are and where most of the effort is happening. You can also see, if you look at the species up there, there's a lot of commonality. Even though they've got very diverse coastlines, those flathead are caught all around the state, but we also have some variation in regional fish. One in particular is the King George whiting, which is the second one down on the right there. And that's a range extending species. So Tasmania is actually an ocean warming hotspot. So we have, I think we're about 3 degrees above the global average in ocean warming. And that's bringing a lot of new species that are very popular on the mainland into Tasmania. All right, but it's not all good news for the sand flathead. As I said, for generations, this fishery has been very popular with the recreational fishery. 98% of the catch is taken by the recreational fishery. There's a very small commercial fishery, and that's actually been closed for a couple of years. So in a lot of areas, we're actually seeing that the stock is depleted. As I said before, there's about 70,000 rec fishers that target this every year, and just that cumulative impact over generations has led to a depleted fishery. The only exception there is Flinders Island, which is the top right on the figure in the boxes, and that's a very remote island, so it doesn't get a lot of fishing activity. All right, so this was a fairly major study we did in 2023. I presented some of this the other day. It's a lot about understanding the typologies of flathead fishers. We had about 1,400 respondents, but also their perceptions on management. What did they think about bag limits, size limits, slot limits, closures, a whole range of management options. But another thing we wanted to look at is potential substitute species. As I said, the flathead has been the mainstay by an order of magnitude. It's what everyone can catch. It's very easy to catch, so that's why it's had so much pressure on it. All right, so what did we do? We asked the respondents, so as I said, we had about 1,400, to score how important each of the listed species is to their fishing experience. So firstly, what's their favourite fish to catch? So that's the top graph here. You can see we run down the list. We've got sand flathead, southern calamari, tiger flathead, which is another flathead species, and we run down. And you can see there that, as you would expect, this was a study about sand flathead. 99% of people ranked sand flathead the highest. Pretty much everyone catches it. So green is obviously a higher ranking, yellow is a lower ranking, and then the grey bars to the left is they don't really catch it, or it's not a species of any interest to them. So as we know, fishing is not just about catching to eat, it's also about the experience of catching them. So Sorry, so that one was the experience. The bottom one is the consumption. So if they catch them, do they actually like them as a species to eat and consume? So similarly, you'll see sand flathead right at the top. So it's a great white flesh fish, enjoyed by fishers for consumption. But again, you come down the list and you can see there's some species down the bottom there like mackerel and mullet. And another interesting one is ocean perch or gurnard, which is a scorpionid, that are not favoured for eating. All right, so what can we do with this information? We've put that all together into a ranking bump plot. And this is really useful for us to sort of see what species of people, not only are they catching, but are they catching to enjoy the experience? Are they good fighting fish or to eat? So on the left, we've got do you catch it or not by ranking. So up the top, sand flathead, lots of people are catching it. The next one, the next column along is do you consume it? Do you actually even eat the fish? Then the rankings. So if you catch it, how much do you enjoy that experience? Or if you consume it, how much do you enjoy that experience? Now, starting at the top, so we know sand flathead is depleted, so we're trying to move effort away from that species. Unfortunately, things that tend to be tasty and good fun to catch are the things that get caught the most. So southern calamari is the next one. That also has some sustainability issues, so we need to look a bit further down the list. So the interesting ones to me are these ones that lots of people are catching it, lots of people are consuming it, but they don't rate it very high in terms of the experience or the consumption. So Australian salmon is one. The ocean perch and gurnard was the other one I mentioned, and we've got mackerel down the bottom there as well. So these, to me, are ones where we've got lots of room for some education to improve how people are actually handling and dispatching those fish. So if you know, particularly for Australian salmon, if you brain spot them properly and bleed them and put them on ice, they're actually quite good tasting fish, but a lot of people just don't know how to handle them. So they're literally just putting them in a bucket and then waiting until they get home, and so it doesn't taste very good. So there's some room for education there. Another one is, again, these climate change species, so King George whiting and snapper. So not many people are catching those or know how to catch them because they're a new experience in the state, but people really enjoy catching them and eating them. So there's, again, some room there for some behavioural change by educating on how to actually catch those fish. Okay, so what do we do with all that information? So we start trying now to communicate that out to the recreational sector. So we've identified some really good alternatives for people to think about, and it's a bit of a mixed bag. We've got tiger flathead, as I said, which is another flathead species in slightly deeper water. Blue-eye trevally, very nice fish, and southern bluefin tuna. We've got a very good tuna fishery in Tasmania. But one of the things there, obviously, a lot of these species are actually in a boat, so we're kind of taking away from the shore fishes. The next lot there are the ones that are generally less popular, but lots of opportunity for shore fishers. So Australian salmon, black bream, ocean perch and gurnard. Again, they've got bad spines, but really good white flesh for eating. And mackerel and mullet. So mackerel's an interesting one. Anyone in Europe knows that mackerel are a really popular fish to eat, but in Australia, they're really not seen as a food for consumption. Climate warning species. So, as I said, these are really interesting ones for us. Very popular on the mainland, becoming a lot more common in Tasmania, but they're growing in population, so it's a reverse thing for fisheries management to go, these are increasing stocks rather than depleting stocks, so we also don't want to overfish them before they actually have a chance to establish. And then finally, as I said, a couple of others that are very popular, but also have got pressure on them themselves. All right, so part of the thing we do then is providing those education pieces. So the government are doing a lot of the work at the moment looking at tips on catching, guides on filleting to get better quality out of the meat, and how to cook. So I've just got a quick video which has just been released by the government with a chef looking at how to prepare some of these less favoured species.
So for me, I love cooking fish species like this. The big benefits of mixed bags. From a chef seen on their own. So hopefully some of these methods and techniques can be handy for at home as much as they are for me in the restaurant. I don't think it's exclusively for somebody who's just in the industry. It's for people to try at home. The more refined you get with a lot of these techniques, the less things you need to add, and the more diverse species that we're eating, the better our fisheries become.
Okay, so that follows on from what we saw this morning about education and how we get some behavioural change. So very simple messaging there about handling the fish differently, thinking about different ways to prepare them. And it's, we think about fisheries management being all about compliance, but here this is about moving people and behavioural change to get them to focus on different species and diversify that effort. Thank you. Yep.
But the last thing it really reminds me of what our message is the mixed blend.
Yep.
So have you ever considered taking that also into account? Because you might actually take into account looking into contaminants and nutrients to make people diversifying their catches.
Yeah, in a positive way, as in they're getting a greater diversity of nutrients, or a negative way, that a greater diversity of contaminants.
Exactly so, because certain contaminants will follow and nutrients will follow fatty species.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, so some of those species that we had up there, I think there was bream, that's a species that lives in a lot of the river systems, which tend to, and they're a lot older, I think they grow to about 45 years, so, but they're not actually a popular eating species. So again, it's in the way they're marketed, so that wouldn't be marketed as a consumption one, but they're great fun to catch, so we'd market that as a catch and release fishery. But I do like the idea of getting a more diverse nutrient range from a diverse bag of fish, because as I said, it was for a long time just that one fish was the absolute staple.
Hey Sean, great talk. It was nice to hear about substituting fish species out, because I don't feel like that's covered a lot in recreational fisheries. Seems like y'all are doing a lot on the education side and management is as well. Do you have any way to measure the impact with how people are going to change their behavior? Kind of on the after the messaging part?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. So as I said, we did that big study in 2023, which sort of sets a nice baseline for us. So I guess the next thing will be maybe in 3 or 4 years, we may look at going back and doing a repeat survey and just seeing if we see changes in that bump plot, where people weren't as keen to consume. Is that we actually been able to bump that up?
Yeah.
Mm.
Super cool. Love the bump plot. Love everything about this. One question, at least in recreational fisheries, sometimes when we start transitioning to new fish to target, like effort can get really high really fast and they're data poor, and then all of a sudden we drive them down really fast. Is there any proactive measures to kind of have management or science in place to make sure we don't go overboard?
Yeah.
Works too well, I guess?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting question. You saw there was a couple there that we're not focusing on because we know they've already got a lot of pressure on them. But some of those other species like mackerel and Australian salmon, they're big populations, they're big schooling fish, they're fast generational turnover. So, again, it's targeted marketing. It's not just go free for all. It's trying to get things happening in the right place. The other one that's an interesting one as well is there was a lot of concern. Have I got time, Wendy? What's the time? Yep. There was a lot of concern from the tackle industry that our number one species is going to be reduced down so it can recover, and there's a lot of concern from the tackle industry that would affect their businesses. But for me, this is another positive of this switch campaign, is that people now go out and they're promoting more expensive lures and diversified fishing gear and so on. So there are real positives in this as well about diversifying that effort, so when the samfletter do recover, people are fishing for different things, and then the pressure ideally won't be as hard just on that one species.